Pittsburgh is a city that will surprise you. When you come here, you'll expect to find rusted mills falling into a dirty river. And as you come through the Fort Pitt Tunnel, coming down a highway where nothing around you is anything but trees, and then all of a sudden it opens up into this beautiful downtown area where the rivers are running and a fountain is going. In the background of anywhere you look is a tapestry of green, of trees.
And there are bridges between neighborhoods here. That's an important concept. Can you build enough bridges? Can you keep it all together? And it's a living metaphor.
There's really an infusion of ideas and a belief. Now we're no longer back on our heels. There's really a strong belief that we can continue to build from a position of strength.
Over time, the focus on eds and meds and high knowledge really has taken off.
It has more than a foothold in the digital economy, in robotics, in finance, in medicine.
I think this aspect of super high-tech Pittsburgh has been bubbling away for about 50 years. This is really Pittsburgh's time.
This is a small American city, but we have one of the country's leading symphony orchestras, ballet, theater, terrific restaurants, lots of bicycle lanes. This is a city that captures the sophistication of the East Coast and retains the civility of the Middle West.
To so many people that have the low expectation, to be taken away by what they end up seeing is something that is unique.
Pittsburgh is a product of geology and water, where two rivers meet to form the Ohio. To the southwest lie rich coal fields, a key ingredient of steel. Pittsburgh's ability to make, sell, and move steel created the fortunes of Hillman, Heinz, Mellon, Carnegie, and the futures of many immigrants who moved here for mighty corporations.
Going into the 70s, Pittsburgh was a metal town. As you get into the 80s, America begins deindustrializing, and it hits here very, very hard.
My first front page story at the newspaper was one of the last big steel strikes, and people just, their identity had been taken away.
There was a feeling that it became less important.
But the good news for Pittsburgh is that it had a strong educational and research base.
The captains of industry recognized a huge responsibility to Pittsburgh. The great family fortunes poured money into foundations that made the city a direct beneficiary. This historic wealth was the institutional glue that helped hold the city together while it regenerated new skill sets.
I would say that the revolution here in Pittsburgh really started with the computer science department at Carnegie Mellon University.
Things started going crazy in the 1990s when you had this huge group of people doing big algorithms and systems for manipulating massive flows of data.
The department was very strong in artificial intelligence and related technologies.
These two worlds hit each other at the same time, and then in the last 10 years you've had this explosion.
And out of that department, the Robotics Institute was created.
Robotics is a very multidisciplinary field. We have people who come from mechanical engineering, people who come from even physics, math, of course computer science.
My most important duty here as dean is to create the computer scientists who are, frankly, I believe, going to be running the world in 2040.
One of the tallest buildings here has the initials UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. That was called the U.S. Steel Building once. So that tells you of a tectonic shift in the economy where medicine becomes more important than primary metals.
UPMC is a large provider organization. We're the largest private employer in Western Pennsylvania with 60,000 employees, 3,500 physicians, over 20 hospitals.
We have petabytes of data related to healthcare. This is one of the few medical schools in the country being driven by our interest in research that mandates that all of our medical students undertake research for all 4 years of their medical studentship.
This is the National Robotics Engineering Center, so it is the tech transfer arm of the Robotics Institute. And in this center, we do applied research and development for companies in the areas of agriculture, mining, and oil and gas, and also for the government. CHIMP stands for CMU's Highly Intelligent Mobile Platform. The CHIMP project began 3 years ago. We wrote a proposal to the government to get funding to build our own robot that has over 10,000 parts.
This is a zebrafish facility. It's one of the biggest in the world. Surprisingly, the zebrafish is very closely related to the humans. They're vertebrates just like we are, and so the basic body pattern of the way the brain and spinal cord and peripheral nervous system is arranged is almost identical to humans in terms of the basic plan.
So CHIMP can grab and turn a valve, open a door, is able to drop down on all 4 limbs and drive on 4 tracks like a tank.
One of the stories with Fukushima is that if a person had gone in and turned a critical valve and vented that gas out to the atmosphere, you would have still had the nuclear meltdown, but you wouldn't have had the explosions. So the idea with CHIMP is that you send a robot in because the robot's not going to have those same problems.
What we're working on is making genetically modified zebrafish that recapitulate certain aspects of the pathology of Parkinson's disease. And so if we have a large library of potential drugs that we want to screen that potentially could be effective treatments for Parkinson's disease, we can screen these very, very quickly against a zebrafish model, and that's really the reason for using that as the model organism. Lots of the patients I look after have got diseases that are incurable. And for them, research is hope. And they're hoping that one day this is going to translate into something that's going to improve their quality of life or even cure their disease.
What's happening is that as the amount of data is getting much larger, the knowledge is still kind of a small kernel, but it's getting higher and higher quality.
We've announced that we have assembled all of these interests, Carnegie Mellon, the medical school, UPMC, to collate, mine, and extract from this big data.
What Pittsburgh has, and what Silicon Valley doesn't, and what Boston doesn't have as good as us, is that we have the ability to create world-class research, to become a global innovation center for corporations around the world.
These large companies are desperate to get hold of our graduates.
Once that happens, you start attracting other businesses. You attract Uber, you attract Google.
I spend a lot of my time talking to companies saying, Andrew, how can I get 3 times as many of your graduates next year than I got this year?
That translates into new research labs, that translates into new applications, this translates even into investments in products and so forth. And Pittsburgh is at the forefront of this, yes.
Pittsburgh today is our Regional Indicators Project. We compare Greater Pittsburgh with 14 other regions across the U.S. to give people kind of a deeper sense of how Pittsburgh is doing. Pittsburgh ranks at or near the top of all sorts of quality of life measurements across the U.S. and frankly across the world. And because of the really anomalously rich philanthropic wealth that we have here, the social programs are strong, the arts are almost freakishly strong for our size.
I think what Pittsburgh learned is that the world didn't end even if steel did. To learn it early and to be able to evolve from that is a great advantage going ahead. In some respects, this is a segregated city.
There are differences in quality of life between the white and African American communities, and that's an area where efforts are redoubled.
We have to look at ways that the jobs that we're creating aren't only being created for the PhD, but for the GED. I'm the mayor of the city that I love. I'm the mayor of the city that my grandfather decided to come to. It's everything in here that flows through. And it's not just me, it's the people that live here. Our blood is black and gold, and we believe that. And we would do anything for the city.
The city itself captures all that I've talked about, and I would add one other dimension to creativity, entrepreneurship, competitiveness, and that would be fire in the belly and hunger. I think this is a city with fire in the belly and hunger.